Like everyone else, you want to learn the way to win, but never to accept the way to lose. To accept defeat, to learn to die is to be liberated from it. So when tomorrow comes, you must free your ambitious mind and learn the art of dying.
Neon lights, I'm baffled. Pick it apart like samples. Give me all I can handle. Light me up like a candle. I'm taming lightning. Percy got that lightning. Plasma in my veins.
Welcome back and welcome to the Taming Lightning podcast. I'm Percy II, your host for Taming Lightning. I'm an artist, alchemist, and educator at the Pittsburgh Glass Center, where I'm pioneering the development of a studio for the emergence of plasma and neon light art. Self-study in this field has led me to a growing network of experts and institutions that allow for conversations with artists, makers, and experts related to plasma, neon, glass, and beyond. Through this podcast, I hope to expand our understanding of plasma and neon light, explore the potential for electrified gases as an artistic medium, and have fun making and sharing what I learn along the way. Hello, Lightning Tamers. This is episode number 48, and in this podcast, returning to Taming Lightning, I'll talk about what I learned during my hiatus, both in plasma and career, updates on the podcast schedule through the end of the year, and talk about what I'm doing now and what comes next. As a recap, the hiatus was a way to take a passive break from the podcast and its related content to focus on adjusting to my new job at Swagelok, as well as moving into a new place and summer workshop preparations, all of which were occurring simultaneously. Some of you may be familiar with Swagelok. You'll know that they contain top quality products and components, some of which that you find in your vacuum setups and gas systems, in both use of neon and plasma. Now, I enjoyed the value of the warehouse position at Swagelok Pittsburgh. It helped improve my knowledge of their products and components, and I gained more experience working in a corporate environment. Now, while I was excited to work for a company that had such a great experience with as a customer, and who have sponsored a previous podcast episode, it was unfortunately a very short run, and I was let go after a 3-month mark on August 1st. Now, this was quite a shocking experience, as I have not been fired or terminated or let go before. This challenged the way I valued myself, which highlighted the lack of faith in my own abilities as a creative, shown my limited and ignorant view on financial aspects, and if I'm going to be honest, it became very clear that my ambition and my occupation cannot come from two separate sources. This, of course, left me angry, anxious, and depressed. My mind would race all over the place, balancing between boiling anger and depleting depression. I would talk with friends and close family to try and focus my thoughts on something more positive and constructive. To me, this was indeed scary. Despite having a severance pay from Swagelok, I felt like I had a ticking timer. And I knew that getting another job would just put me in the same place I was trying to get away from, that it just wouldn't work. But most importantly, I needed to kind of reset myself. I needed to take time to reduce the years of anxiety that comes with working an occupation of these sorts. Those of hotel, working in warehouse, working in fish sales. Those were my previous jobs. And I needed to slow down, like really slow down. You see, I didn't think that stopping was an option. So I slowly took the time to regulate my emotions on the matter and to think about what to focus on and what I want. And the first thing I did was tell the Pittsburgh Glass Center about the termination. Now, for most people, I often get this kind of confusion, whether it's from artists in residence, instructors, or visitors, about my involvement and positioning at the Pittsburgh Glass Center. You see, for the last 6 years, I've been working as an independent contractor and pioneer to the development of neon and plasma art programming. That includes learning, promoting, developing, networking, and building my knowledge, the requisite equipment, and the community. These developments have been funded by various grants, and all the things that you see are from my efforts and time, but that's not without the knowledge and support of the neon and plasma community. So these things took time, and they took place outside of the various jobs I had worked. And honestly, yeah, these jobs created a bit of friction and limited my freedoms and time to invest in these things. So when the Pittsburgh Glassner responded, they said they would pay me through the grant called the Fisher Grant. And this is a grant that we applied for at the same time as the Advancing Black Arts in Pittsburgh grant in 2019. And this was designed to kind of build some off-site outreach programming through neon and plasma. So in this case, we decided to build a system that would go off-site. And this will allow me to demonstrate to kids neon and plasma aspects, glass blowing to high school and middle school. And it was a way to help them see the bridge of the gap between their creative and their academic studies, art and science, but also encourage them to take seriously their acquired education, because even though it kind of sucks to be in those grades and those schools at this time, there are indeed value in studying them and seeing how they can apply what they learned or the areas that they're learning in to their curiosities and their passions, regardless of how someone feels about college, right? And so with that, I would spend my time writing and building class structures and organizing aspects of what it would be if I was a coordinator for neon and plasma at the Pittsburgh Glass Center, which means I can really put in my energy into the financial side of the development. And then where those developments would stop and go, I would be paid through the Pittsburgh Glass Center's independent contractor system, which would be teaching, assisting, or helping with workshops, activities, and private lessons. So does this mean I'm a staff member? No, but I do have special privileges that allow me to navigate and use the Glass Center for the purposes of program development and personal work. If you're someone who's interested in doing a residency for plasma or trying to get away for neon, include me in that. If you're someone who is has a project you want to do, apply for residency and use me as a reference. I will support that. I'm here for that. But in the end, financially, this means I have to be very active in my contractor openings so I can get in there and work. And in managing my own commissions, the neon plasma development, and producing the podcast. It doesn't make it that much easier. Of course, sure, it might be a little bit more stressful, but there's less conflict overall because there's less friction between what I'm doing. They're all aligned in the same place, in the same direction. So overall, I'm doing what I want. And I think this would be a good time to take a quick break from that and to talk about what's next on the podcast and to talk about Patreon. At this time, we have 4 episodes throughout the remainder of the year for 2022, with episode 49 through 52. Episode 49 will be a reading from the Glass Quarterly magazine, issue 163, a review of Lit, Light and Transmission by Vicki A. Clark, which will be releasing later on in October. In the first week of November, we'll have episode 50 as a follow-up interview with the critic Vicki A. Clark to talk about her background as an independent curator, writer, and critic, as well as insights on the exhibition. Episode 51, which will be later in November, we'll be talking with Wayne Stratman. Here we'll be talking about plasma lighting before the discovery of inert gases, talking about one of the most under-recognized pioneers of gas discharge lighting, known as Daniel McFarland Moore, for his Moore's tubes. And then episode 52 will be with Ethan Samaha, Light and Space artist and Alfred alumni in Neon, in December. Here is a visit from Ethan back in 2021, where we talk about his background in theater lighting and how that feeds into his love of color and neon. I'll also be working on a video from the later part of that conversation, which involves a video walkthrough of Ethan's graduating exhibition, Horizontal Vertical, which I'll hope to upload on YouTube. So what does this have to do with Patreon? It's been able to cover the cost of podcast hosting and the tools I use for producing the podcast. At this moment, I do have 6 patrons on Patreon, and they're paying either $2 or $5 a month. And that covers, exactly, my hosting and the tools I use for the final renderings and producing the podcast. My patrons do get recognized on my website, taminglightning.net, on my page of patrons, which includes people who also provide donations or gifts of various sorts. It could be through Ko-fi, or it could be they donated their time, they helped fix something, they donated equipment. All those people are put on that page. Additionally, you'll get access to episodes early. I will cut out any of the ads or sponsorships I may have in that aspect. But in this case, you guys get the release through 2022. In addition to downloadable access to some of the slides that are normally viewable on the website. So please support the podcast. You could do so on Patreon at www.patreon, that's patreon.com/Taming Lightning. So what did I learn from all this? What did I learn from this summer about plasma and about neon? Well, that things are going to keep on moving. It's no surprise that supplies, both tubing and gases, are challenging to get, especially neon, krypton, and xenon, whether they are inaccessible or excessively expensive. And so to kind of help inform us about that, I'll be reading an email I received from Jim Avolt as of August 16th, 2022. Jim writes, "You can probably find an email I sent you back in February of last year. Back then, 50 liters of xenon was offered to you at $1,900. Today, we are selling on eBay at $19,000. And I'll admit, that's too high, but we use it to get direct calls and to avoid the 10% eBay charges for sales through their venue. So here's today's pricing for you to consider. All 50-liter packages are lecture bottles fitted with brass CGA 580 valves, and all 100, 250, and 50-liter packages are disposable cylinders fitted with the same valve. Argon's pricing was not affected by the war in Ukraine because of the container costs. There is very little savings in getting smaller packages. I want to let you guys note that all shipping here is $80 by FedEx ground, because these cylinders are compressed gases. They can only be shipped by ground and by ship. So for argon, 50 liters is $280. 100 liters is $290. 250 liters is $320. And 500 liters is $375. That's a pretty solid price. To give you context for what's coming up next, is that it's pretty much the same price as has been since 2019, 2018. But for neon pricing has skyrocketed and availability remains inconsistent. 60+% of the global demand for neon was satisfied by Ukraine, and all 3 purification facilities are closed indefinitely. We have stock from delivery that we just received before the start of the conflict, with 50 liters starting at $700 plus the shipping for ground, and 100 liters being $1,000 plus shipping. To give you context, I was able to purchase 250 liters for $370 in 2018. And so the prices have definitely gone up. You're going to find it very hard to grab these. As you said, they remain inconsistent in their availability. So Global Rare Gases will be selling it as much as they have in stock. And you may also look out for Avalon Tech. Xenon's availability is practically non-existent. Pricing is sky high, with the global production used to be about 18 million liters. 2022 production is budgeted for 11 to 12 million liters. And aerospace has no option to replace xenon used in ion thrusters, and the demand for is increasing as private space travel and satellite systems ramp up. He said he was contacted by a private aeronautic company seeking to fulfill a new requirement for over 1 million liters per year. That is about 10% of the global production. They are looking at every possible option to secure their xenon requirement, including building and purchasing ASUs, which are air separation units, which is a very challenging market to navigate, and xenon is expected to go tighter throughout all of 2023. That said, we have uncommitted inventory about 3,000 liters and have a cylinder containing 10 meters squared of aerospace-grade 99.99% xenon, that is 3 nines purity, delivered in 30 to 40 days. That would have been delivered late September or early October, as well as having 1.4 million in that one cylinder of gas. We are working hard to pre-sell it. So here are a couple options for you to consider. And boys, it's going to blow your mind. So 25 liters in a lecture bottle is $7,450 USD. 50 liters, which when I bought it back in 2018 was $1,800, costs now $11,700. If you're going to get 100 liters, no way are you going to buy 100 liters. That is sitting at $19,700. So it is gone up. But hey, if you're interested in any of these gases here, or to having a conversation with Jim Avolt, you can hit him up at Jim Avolt at globalraregases.com. Now, you probably noticed that I did not talk about Krypton at all. Well, Krypton has not been available since 2021. It has been relegated mainly to microprocessing manufacturing, so we're not going to have access to it from our bigger distributors like Airgas, Air Liquide, and so on and so forth. And that's not even talking about Global Rare Gases. But if you're interested in getting Krypton, I believe Avalon Tech in Brooklyn, New York would have some in inventory. I had recently purchased a 25-liter low-pressure tank with a C10 fitting for $670. And he does sell a little C10 valve with a 1/4 NPT male for $80. Because these are C10 tanks and maybe different from people who are using the CGA 580, or maybe you just aren't familiar with it at all, you can ask me or anyone on the Facebook group Neon and Plasma Art for Beginners to provide some guidance. That is to say that with all this news and all this information, don't take this in fear or desperation. Please resist scarcity, as there will only lead you astray. But here's something to think about. Just to give you some context to this whole situation. Neon people, if you got a few tanks, I think you'll be able to ride it out until the recovery. Because, hey, if people say a liter can do 200 signs, 200 tubes, then you're totally solid. And since most of your stuff will be argon, you're totally still good. But if you need neon, I think you're still great if you can find neon or you do have neon. But if I'm talking to the plasma people, they may be biting at their nails at this point. You may not have that many options at this time. It's going to be very expensive. But considering that I've had a tank of 300 or 250 for about 3 years now, it's not empty yet, and I've gone through 4 workshops with that tank. I think you can last quite a bit as an independent on neon, and there may be some still storages available through Avalon Tech. But as a plasma person, just think about how your scale and usage goes. You might run out a little bit earlier than other people. Don't be too scarce about your xenon. Be smart about how you're using it. That means just kind of think about being experimenting with less. That's what I would say. But this doesn't mean that you can't purchase a cruder quality of rare gas or even experiment with other gases within reason and safety consideration. For example, the PAA or Plasma Art Alliance, we've been looking into using cruder rare gases, something around the food grade level, and experimenting with CO2 as with the early lighted experiments of Daniel McFarland Moore and his Moore tubes. So those are things that we try to look at. We adapt, we learn, and we expand our knowledge. On to more positive news from this summer workshops. It's been reassuring to see that the resources and slide presentations I've distilled from the Intro to Plasma series have helped plasma workshops become just a little bit more digestible. Documents such as the Elements of Plasma Venn diagram help visualize the intersection of knowledge and tools that allow us to create a plasma lamp sculpture. The Anatomy of a Plasma Sculpture is a document that helps simplify and break down the plasma sculpture into its basic parts and vocabulary. The Guidelines for Vessel Structure, which provide glass artists and designers with working guidelines that helps you understand the risks, including safety tips and explanations and examples, and workarounds to better grasp both the aesthetic and technical completions of the work. Again, this is to say that these guides or slides are only possible from the knowledge and wisdom of my mentors, contemporary pioneers, and co-learners in the field. And I say this as a student who wished there was more prepared and digestible guides at plasma workshops. And students during Ed Kirshner and James Akers' class, including the aforementioned instructors, have found value in having these slides and presentations as teaching aids. Because if we are to be serious about sharing and inviting interest in plasma, it is necessary to be able to show students and interested parties what they can practice and take home to their studio. We may not have the necessary facilities to pump plasma available to everyone, but everyone who can work in glass can make something that can be filled with plasma. This is an awesome time, and I'm not the only one putting together notes and information. We are making things better. We are learning from each other and find relevant information in specialized fields. That being said, I got a detailed guide coming up about using kiln-fired enamel as an affordable solder for creating ready-made glass vessels, or in attaching electrodes to complicated furnace-blown, kiln-fired, or cast glass vessels. Think the works that I've done recently, those that Wayne Stratman done in Lumen Glass, or the works by Jason Chakravarty. And I'm super excited to share this with you guys. And it's all because Ed constantly evolves and grows his knowledge every time he teaches. So thank you, Ed. And lastly, I've been asked to talk about transformers and gas recipes and mixtures. I'll admit that I'm under-practiced here, but I'm willing to share what I understand and what has made my recent sculptures more stable in the last 2 years, and the tools and things I look for when I'm filling a piece. What I'll say now is that it would best benefit you to be willing to take more than one time, more than one day to fill and refill your piece. That's my biggest advice. Don't settle on one take. For me, I guess now it's time to juggle, develop my new skills in plasma and neon, teaching and programming, and find new and refreshing conversations with artists, makers, and distributors to keep things glowing. Thank you for listening to the Taming Lightning podcast. Music and audio credits to the following artists in order of appearance. The Art of Dying quote from Bruce Lee from the Longstreet episode number 1. The opening theme, Taming Lightning by Trav B. Ryan. And the credits, Walking by Roz Hobb. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. It's kind of crazy, right? To really put my life and energy on the line without the safety net of a job to provide me with consistent hours, vacation benefits, and health care. This summer and this community has been a gift that keeps me growing and glowing. And so I thank you, listeners, and everyone in the community for your help and your contributions. Additionally, I'd like to thank the Pittsburgh Glass Center for supporting me as a place of research and inspiration, in addition to their support via the Fisher Grant that has allowed me to continue working on plasma and neon development at PGC. Plasma Art Alliance and the Facebook group Neon and Plasma Art for Beginners, where I have an access to a well of knowledge and connects me to some amazing and supportive people. Serious, do not sleep on Facebook because you hate it. There is a lot that you can gain from checking out the Neon and Plasma Art for Beginners group on Facebook. If Facebook is a problem for you, then reach out to the people that are involved in that. So please support Taming Lightning, subscribe to the newsletter on www.taminglightning.net, and follow on Instagram at Taming Lightning. There are several options for you to support, one of which is a one-time donation through Ko-fi, spelled ko-fi.com/Taming Lightning, or you could join me on Patreon for the additional perks and benefits. I'll have links provided in the show notes, so feel free to share, comment, and subscribe. And as always, be safe, be healthy, and be strong, and I'll see you next time.